Hello, esteemed viewers and listeners, and welcome to yet another session of biology. My name is Teacher Eric. Well, let us proceed to look at some of the bones of the axial skeleton and also those of the appendicular skeleton. So let us begin with this photograph. So below are photographs sampled from mammalian skeletons. Let us look at uh, photograph A. So photograph A, this is the skull or cranium. And what makes us say that it is the cranium and not any other bone? Number one, it is because of the orbits. You can see the orbits where we have the uh, eyes will be fixed within these orbits. Then, of course, it has the sutures. You can see the sutures that forms the innominate bone of the cranium. That is the cranium. Then B. B here, this is a cervical vertebrae. To be specific, this is the atlas. This is the atlas. Why say it is the atlas? Because number one, it has reduced or even no centrum, and then it has a wide neural canal for passage of spinal cord, and also it has a concave depression. This is to articulate with the occipital condyle of the skull to form a joint that permits the nodding action of the head. Then we move on to look at this other feature. Of course, it has wing-like transverse process for muscle attachment. Then let us move to photograph C. So photograph C, this is a typical cervical vertebrae. Remember that a typical cervical vertebrae has a branched transverse processes. You can see them clearly here from the photograph, the branched transverse processes. Then it has a branched neural spine, a branched neural spine. This is a typical cervical vertebrae found within the cervical region or the neck region. Let us move on to photograph D. Photograph D, this is a lumbar vertebra. This is a lumbar vertebra. Why? Because it has um, it has long it has long neural long transverse process, and it also has extra processes that includes the metapophysis and anapophysis. It also has a wide and a broad centrum, of course, to support the weight of the vertebra. Then photograph E. E. This is this is the thoracic vertebra. This is the thoracic vertebrae. Why? Because it has a long neural spine, and it also has within the centrum. This is the centrum. This part here within the centrum, it has articulating facets. You can see here. This is the uh, capitular demifacet to articulate with the capitulum of the ribs, and then within the transverse process it has another articulating facet. This is the tubercular facet that articulates with the tuberculum of the rib. That makes it to be the thoracic vertebrae. Then we move on to photograph F. Photograph F, is this is the sacrum bone. So the sacrum bone is formed by fusion of five uh, sacral vertebrae. Five sacral vertebrae will fuse to form an innominate bone that is called the sacrum. Of course, the sacrum has the first sacral vertebrae has a widened transverse process. It has a widened transverse process that articulates with the ilium, of the pelvic girdle to form an immovable joint. Of course, for the rigidity of the pelvic region within a mammalian skeleton. Then somewhere here within this point, within the sacral vertebrae, somewhere within this point there will be the coccyx or the coccygeal vertebrae that will be articulating at this point here. Well, let us proceed to look at other photographs of different bones within mammalian endoskeleton. So, of course, I was telling you that within this point here, so this is the sacrum bone that is made up of five fused sacral vertebrae. So within this point here, this is the coccyx. This bone here, this is the coccyx that is formed from fusion of several caudal vertebrae. Remember, in human beings, it is almost vestigial because we have no tail, but initially it was there. But due to evolution, it became rudimentary and has been since reduced in size. So this is the caudal vertebrae or the coccyx. Of course, this is also the diagram of the caudal vertebrae. This one here, and then this one here is the uh, sacral vertebrae. The sacral vertebrae that is made up of 5 fused sacral vertebrae to form an innominate bone called the sacrum. Within the sacrum here, you can see that it has a neural arc that protects the the entire bone. Then, of course, it has a wide neural canal for passage of spinal cord. But once we move to the coccyx or the caudal vertebrae, then we don't have any neurospine. So basically, the caudal vertebrae is basically a centrum. The entire caudal vertebrae is a centrum, so it does not have any neural canal. And then, of course, we have these perforations here. These ones here, these are the vertebratorial canals for passage of blood vessels and also arteries. And I did say that this first part here of the sacrum, it has a widened or wing-like transverse process to articulate with the ilium to form an immovable joint. This one is for purpose of rigidity at the pelvic region. Then we move on to this and the bone here, this bone H. So bone H, you can clearly see that this one is an innominate bone that will be part of the pelvic girdle. Let us look at this other diagram here, the photograph I. So photograph I, this is the thoracic region. So the thoracic region is made up of the rib bones and also the rib cage and sternum. So we have the rib cage and sternum. The rib cage is a collection of rib bones, and then we have the sternum here, or the breastbone. So you can see that you can see very clearly that at the ventral side, the rib bones will articulate with the sternum. Then at the dorsal side, that is at the back, where they will articulate with the thoracic vertebrae. So this is the, of course, this is the sternum, and then we have the rib bones. So we have some rib bones that do not articulate with the sternum, and we call them the floating rib bones. Sorry, then we move on to look at this other photograph J. So photograph J, this is the pelvic girdle. Pelvic girdle is formed by 3 fused bones that collectively forms an innominate bone. So this first part here, this is the ilium. This is the ilium. It forms the largest portion of the pelvic girdle. You can see the first sacral vertebrae has wing-like transverse process that articulates with the ilium of the pelvic girdle. Then, of course, we have the acetabulum. The acetabulum will articulate with the head of femur to form a ball and socket joint at this point here. Then we have these hollow-like structures. These are the obturator foramen for passage of blood vessels. And then we have this part here. This is the pubis symphysis. Pubis symphysis, that is most pronounced in females because it normally allows for flexibility and normally widens up during parturition. And then, of course, this point here, this part, so this is the pubis symphysis, then this is the pubis. Then this part here, this at the rear side here, as we move on to the obturator foramen, this part here, this is the we say that this one is the ilium, then we have the pubis, and then we have the ischium. So this is the ischium. This point here, this is the ischium of the pelvic girdle found within the pelvic region. And then we move on to this other bone. This is the scapula. This is the scapula. Of course, it has a triangular shaped structure, and then it has the suprascapular here. This one is to increase the surface area for muscle attachment or within the shoulder region, and then it has the glenoid cavity that articulates with the head